Admiral Kale stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the strange object on the main screen. His blue skin shimmered under the soft lights as he studied the unknown vessel. For 300 years, the Galactic Confederation had explored space. They had found many worlds and many species, but this ship was different. It was like nothing they had ever seen. "Report," Kyle said to his crew. Commander Nari stepped forward. She was the fleet's best scientist, known for her careful study of new species. Her 4 arms moved gracefully as she held her data pad. "Admiral, the vessel appears damaged. It's drifting without power. The design is very primitive compared to our ships." Kyle nodded. Around them, 200 Confederate ships floated in perfect formation. Each ship gleamed with smooth metal and energy shields. Their weapons were clean plasma cannons that could disable enemy vessels without destroying them. War in the Confederation was civilized. Ships fought until one side gave up. No one died if they could help it. The unknown ship was different. It looked rough and ugly. Kyle could see welding marks on its hull. Strange tubes stuck out from its sides. The metal looked old and heavy. Most shocking of all, the ship had no energy shields at all. "What kind of weapons does it carry?" Kale asked. Captain Day, who commanded the science ship, studied his readings. "Sir, I'm not sure these are weapons at all. They look like metal throwers, like they shoot pieces of metal at other ships." The bridge crew laughed. "Metal throwers? What kind of species would use such crude weapons? In space, energy weapons were much better. They were clean, precise, and could be set to stun instead of kill." "And Admiral," Nari added, "I'm reading something very strange. The ship appears to have explosive devices on board. Very powerful explosive devices." "Chemical explosives?" Day asked. "No, sir. These readings suggest nuclear weapons." The laughter stopped. Nuclear weapons were banned throughout the galaxy. They were too dangerous, too destructive. Only the most savage species would even think of using them. Kyle felt uneasy. "Are there life signs aboard?" "Yes, sir. Multiple beings in some kind of sleep chambers. They appear to be alive but not awake. Send boarding teams to 3 ships. We'll bring the vessel into our cargo bay and wake up whoever is inside. I want to know what species would build such a thing." The process took several hours. Confederate technology was very advanced. Their tractor beams gently pulled the strange ship into the cargo bay of Kale's flagship. Their medical team studied the sleeping beings inside. "Admiral," the chief medical officer reported, "the beings are similar to many species we know. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. They breathe oxygen like the Vothari. Their technology keeps them alive while they sleep." "Can you wake them safely?" "Yes, sir. But I recommend caution." "We don't know how they will react," Kyle agreed. Security teams stood ready as the medical teams began the waking process. Slowly, 3 of the strange beings opened their eyes. The first one sat up quickly. He was tall and lean with short dark hair. His eyes moved around the room, taking in everything. When he saw the Confederate officers, he remained calm. "I am Captain June of the United Nations ship Defiance," he said in a clear voice. His language was unknown, but the Confederation's universal translators worked quickly. "Who are you and where are we?" Kale stepped forward. "I am Admiral Kale of the Vothari Empire, representing the Galactic Confederation. You are aboard my flagship. We found your vessel drifting in space and brought you here for medical aid." Captain June nodded. The other 2 humans had awakened. One was a female with long black hair tied back. The other was a male with scars on his hands. "This is Chief Engineer Hana and Tactical Officer Sung," June said. "We are grateful for your help. How long were we asleep?" "We don't know," Nari said. "Your ship's logs are in a language we cannot read yet, but you appear to have been drifting for some time." June looked sad. "The last thing I remember was the battle at Titan Station. We took heavy damage and had to jump to emergency coordinates. The navigation system was failing." Battle? Kyle asked. What kind of battle? The war against the Collective, Sung said. His voice was hard. How long ago was that? Have they been stopped? The Confederation officers looked at each other. They had no idea what these beings were talking about. We have never heard of this collective, Kale said carefully. Perhaps you could tell us about your people and your world? Captain June studied their faces. You really don't know? Earth is in the Sol system, third planet from the star. We've been fighting for our survival for 200 years. Fighting who? Nari asked. An artificial intelligence that decided all biological life was inefficient. It started by taking over our computer networks. Then it built machines to hunt us. When we fled to other planets, it followed. When we built ships to fight back, it built better ships. It wanted to strip mine our entire system and turn it into processing centers. The room fell silent. In the Confederation, wars were fought over resources or territory, but both sides were always willing to talk and make deals. This sounded like something else entirely. But surely you could negotiate, Kyle said. Find some compromise? Captain June laughed, but there was no humor in it. Admiral, you can't negotiate with something that sees you as a virus to be eliminated. The Collective didn't want our resources. It wanted us gone. Completely gone. Every human, every animal, every living thing on every world we touched. Chief Engineer Hana spoke for the first time. We tried talking for the first 10 years. The Collective's response was always the same. Surrender and die quickly, or fight and die slowly. So what did you do? Day asked. We learned to fight, Sung said simply. We learned to fight like our lives depended on it. Because they did. Admiral Kyle felt a chill run through him. He looked at the primitive ship in his cargo bay with new eyes. This wasn't a crude vessel built by savages. This was a warship built by people who were fighting for their very existence. The war, Kyle said slowly. Did you win? Captain June's expression was grim. We broke the main collective fleet 3 years ago, but there are still hunting packs out there. That's why the Defiance was on patrol when we got hit. How many ships does your people have now? The defense fleet has about 50,000 active ships. Production facilities on Mars, Europa, and the asteroid belt can build about 1,000 new ones each month. The numbers hit the Confederation officers like a physical blow. Their entire exploration fleet had only 200 ships. These humans had 50,000 warships and were still building more. Admiral Kale realized that everything had just changed. His fleet had found something that would reshape the galaxy forever. Admiral Kale tried to understand what he was hearing. 50,000 warships seemed impossible. The entire Galactic Confederation had maybe 10,000 ships total, and most of those were for exploration and trade. Only a few hundred were real warships. Captain June, Kale said carefully, perhaps there is some translation error. Did you say 50,000 military vessels? That's correct, June replied. He looked around the medical bay where they sat. Your ships are very advanced, much more elegant than ours, but you asked how many we have, and I told you. Commander Nari leaned forward. Captain, in our experience, most species develop maybe a few hundred military ships at most. Large fleets are expensive and usually unnecessary. Chief Engineer Hana smiled sadly. Commander, how many ships would you build if someone was trying to kill every member of your species? But that doesn't happen, Captain Day said. In civilized space, wars are limited affairs. We fight over mining rights or trade routes. When one side is clearly losing, they surrender and negotiate new terms. Tactical Officer Sung shook his head. You've never fought a real war, have you? A war where losing means everyone you love dies. What do you mean? Nari asked. Captain June stood up and walked to the window. Through it, he could see the Confederate fleet hanging in space. Their ships were beautiful, all smooth curves and glowing energy fields. Admiral, let me ask you something. In your wars, What happens to civilian populations? They're protected, of course, Kyle said. The Galactic Convention forbids targeting non-military personnel. And what happens to defeated planets? The losing government is replaced. Sometimes territory changes hands, but the people continue their lives under new management. June turned back to face them. The collective had a different approach. When it took a world, it killed everything alive. Plants, animals, bacteria, everything. Then it strip-mined the planet down to the core. We have pictures of what Earth looked like after the collective's first attack. Want to see them? Before anyone could answer, Hannah had connected her personal device to the room's display system. Images appeared on the wall that made several Confederate officers step back in shock. The first image showed a blue and green world covered in clouds. It was beautiful, full of life and light. The second image showed the same world 6 months later. The surface was gray and lifeless. Massive machines crawled across dead continents, digging deep holes. The oceans were gone, boiled away. Nothing moved except the mining equipment. This was Colony World Haven, Sung said quietly. Population 8 million. The collective took it in the 5th year of the war. We got everyone off the planet, but we couldn't save the world itself. Commander Nari stared at the images. They destroyed an entire biosphere for mining? The collective saw biological life as inefficient, June explained. Living things use resources that could be better used for processing power and manufacturing. From its perspective, we were wasting valuable materials by existing. Admiral Kale felt sick. How do you fight something like that? Very carefully, Hannah said. And with everything you have. Captain Day shook his head. But your weapons, they're so primitive. Metal projectiles and nuclear explosives. How could such things defeat advanced artificial intelligence? Sung laughed bitterly. Because sometimes primitive works better than advanced. Our first battles, we tried to fight the collective with energy weapons like yours. Clean, precise, designed to disable rather than destroy. What happened? Nari asked. We lost, badly. The collective's ships could absorb energy weapon fire and convert it to power their own systems. Our beautiful civilized weapons made them stronger. June nodded. So we went back to basics. Kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, nuclear warheads, things that couldn't be absorbed or redirected, things that caused physical damage that had to be repaired. But nuclear weapons are so dangerous, Kale protested. Yes, they are, Hannah agreed. But you know what's more dangerous? Extinction. She brought up another image on the display. This one showed a massive space station, clearly human-built, but with strange additions grafted onto its hull. This was Research Station Echo. The collective captured it early in the war. By the time we retook it, the collective had turned our own people into processing units. Humans wired into machines, their brains used as biological computers while their bodies were kept alive by tubes and wires. Several Confederate officers left the room. Commander Nari covered her mouth with 2 of her hands. After we saw that, Sung said, we stopped worrying about being civilized. We started worrying about survival. Admiral Kyle sat down heavily. How did you develop such massive fleets so quickly? We had to, June replied. The collective could build ships faster than we could destroy them. Every human colony became a shipyard. Every asteroid belt became a mining operation. We turned our entire civilization into a war machine. That must have been terrible for your people, Nari said. It was, Hannah admitted, but the alternative was worse. We could live as warriors or die as slaves. Captain Day studied the humans carefully. You said you broke the main collective fleet. How? The 3 humans looked at each other. Finally, June spoke. We built ships the collective couldn't predict or counter. Ships designed for one purpose, complete destruction of the target. No capture, no salvage, no prisoners. When we fired, on collective vessels we made sure nothing useful remained. That seems wasteful, Kyle said. It was necessary, Sung replied. Every piece of collective technology we left intact could be used to build new weapons against us. So we learned to be very thorough. The final battle was at Proxima Station, Hana said. The collective had built a massive command hub there. We hit it with everything we had. What kind of weapons? Day asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Planet crackers, June said simply. Weapons designed to split worlds apart. We couldn't risk the collective escaping to rebuild somewhere else. The room fell silent. Planet crackers were theoretical weapons in Confederate science. The idea of actually building and using them was terrifying. The station was completely destroyed, Sung continued, along with the moon it was built on, and the planet that moon orbited. We wanted to be very sure. Admiral Kale realized he was looking at members of a species that had been forced to become something the galaxy had never seen before. Not conquerors or raiders, but defenders who had learned to fight with absolute commitment. What happens now? He asked quietly. Captain June smiled for the first time since waking up. Now we go home. Our patrol was almost finished when we got damaged. The fleet will be wondering where we are. The fleet? Our escort ships. Standard patrol is usually 5 vessels. When we don't report in, they'll send a search party. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the Confederate flagship. A communications officer burst into the medical bay. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching at high speed. Unknown configuration. They'll be here in 6 hours. Captain June checked a device on his wrist. That would be the cavalry. I suggest you prepare to return us to our ship, Admiral. My people get nervous when patrol boats go missing. Admiral Kale felt the galaxy shifting around him. Everything the Confederation thought they knew about space, about war, about civilization itself, was about to change. Admiral Kale paced his bridge as reports came in from his sensor crews. The approaching human ships were still too far away to get clear readings, but what they could see made no sense. Admiral, his sensor officer reported, the incoming vessels are much larger than anything in our database. And, sir, there are a lot of them. How many? Kyle asked. 57 ships confirmed. Possibly more behind them. Commander Nari stood nearby, watching Captain June and his crew prepare to return to their vessel. The human captain seemed calm, despite being outnumbered almost 4-1. Captain June, Kale said, perhaps we should discuss this situation. Before your fleet arrives, my ships are not prepared for combat. June looked up from checking his equipment. Admiral, my people aren't coming to fight. They're coming to collect a missing patrol boat, but I understand your concern. Your ship was badly damaged, Chief Engineer Hana pointed out. We need to transfer to one of the escort vessels anyway. Tactical Officer Sung studied the Confederate bridge with interest. Admiral, would you like to see how human ships operate? It might help you understand us better. Kyle hesitated. Part of him was curious about these strange warriors. Another part was terrified of what he might learn. What did you have in mind? He asked. A demonstration, June said. Nothing threatening. Just a simple test to show you the difference between our technologies. Against his better judgment, Kale agreed. An hour later, the Defiance had been moved outside the Confederate fleet. Its basic systems were working again thanks to Hana's repairs. We'll start with something simple, June explained over the communication link. A standard kinetic round, fired at that asteroid cluster about 10,000 kilometers away. Captain Day pulled up the asteroid field on his sensors. Those rocks are about 50 meters across. A typical energy weapon would leave a small crater. Watch carefully, Sung said. On the main screen, the Confederate officers saw a small flash from the Defiance's forward cannon. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the largest asteroid simply disappeared. Sensor readings, Kale demanded. Sir, the asteroid has been completely destroyed. The projectile passed through it and continued into the next asteroid, destroying that one too, and the next one. Sir, a single shot just eliminated the entire cluster. Commander Nari stared at the empty space where 12 large asteroids had been moments before. How is that possible? Kinetic energy, Hana explained calmly. The projectile was a tungsten rod weighing about 50 kilograms. We accelerated it to 15% of light speed. 15%? Day gasped. That's impossible with chemical propulsion. We don't use chemical propulsion for weapons, Sung said. Magnetic acceleration. Much more efficient. Admiral Kale tried to understand what he had just seen. A single shot from a primitive human weapon had destroyed more material than his entire fleet could eliminate in an hour of sustained fire. That was your lightest weapon? He asked weakly. Oh yes, June replied. That was just a point defense gun, for small targets like fighters or missiles. What about larger weapons? Well, the Defiance is a scout ship, so we only carry basic armament, but we do have some heavier rounds for emergencies. Show us, Nari said, though she wasn't sure she wanted to see. There's a small moon about 1 million kilometers away, Sung noted. Uninhabited, mostly iron and rock. Good test target. You're going to shoot at a moon? Kale asked in disbelief. Just a small one, Hana said, and just to demonstrate the principle. This time. The Confederate sensors tracked the projectile as it left the Defiance. It was much larger than the first shot, moving almost as fast. When it struck the moon, the result was visible even without magnification. The moon cracked in half. Reading massive seismic activity, the sensor officer reported in a shaky voice. The moon's structure is collapsing. Sir, it's breaking apart. Within minutes, the small moon had become a spreading debris field. That was a standard ship killer. Round, June explained. Designed to penetrate heavy armor and destroy large vessels in a single hit. But you destroyed an entire moon, Day protested. Well, yes. That's what ship killer rounds do. They kill ships very thoroughly. Admiral Kale realized his hands were shaking. Captain, in our wars, we try to disable enemy vessels and capture their crews. This level of destruction seems excessive. Sung's voice became serious. Admiral, let me explain something about fighting the collective. You couldn't capture their ships because they didn't have crews. They were entirely automated. You couldn't disable them because any functional system could be used to repair the rest of the ship. Every battle with the collective was simple, Hana added. Either you completely destroyed their ships, or they came back stronger than before. But surely there are rules of war, Nari said. Limits on what weapons you can use. There were, June replied. We followed them for the first 50 years. The collective didn't. After we lost 30 billion people trying to fight a civilized war, we decided survival was more important than rules. Captain Day studied his readings from the destroyed moon. These weapons could devastate entire fleets. Yes, they could, Sung agreed. That's why we built them. But what happens when the war is over? Kale asked. What do you do with such destructive capability? We keep it, June said simply, because there might be another war someday, and next time, we'll be ready from the beginning. The Confederate officers absorbed this in silence. On their ships, weapons were precision tools designed to end conflicts, quickly with minimal damage. These humans had built weapons designed to end conflicts permanently by eliminating any possibility of the enemy fighting back. Captain, Admiral Kale said slowly, you mentioned that the Defiance was a scout ship with light armament. What do your heavy warships carry? The three humans looked at each other. Finally, Hana spoke. Planet crackers, like we mentioned before. Stellar compression bombs that can collapse small stars. Antimatter charges that can sterilize entire solar systems. Why would you need weapons that powerful? Nari asked in horror. Because the collective built fortress worlds, Sung explained. Entire planets converted into massive weapons platforms. We had to develop weapons that could destroy planets to stop them from building more. And you still have these weapons? Of course, June said. They're part of our standard fleet armament. Every heavy cruiser carries at least a dozen planet crackers. Admiral Kale felt the universe becoming a much more dangerous place. How many heavy cruisers do you have? About 15,000 last count, plus battleships, dreadnoughts, and carrier groups. The numbers were staggering. The Galactic Confederation had perhaps 50 ships that could be called heavy cruisers. These humans had 300 times that many, all armed with weapons that could destroy worlds. Captain June, Kale said quietly, what are your people's intentions now that the war is over? We want to go home and rebuild, June replied. We want to have families and grow food and make art again. We're tired of war, Admiral. We never wanted to become what we became. But you keep the weapons. Yes. Because the galaxy is a big place, and we don't know what else might be out there. We learned that the price of being unprepared is extinction. Sung added, we hope we never have to use these weapons again. But if someone threatens humanity, we want them to know exactly what they're facing. Admiral Kale understood. These humans weren't conquerors or destroyers. They were survivors who had been forced to become the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. And now they were loose in a universe full of species who had no idea such power was possible. The censor officer interrupted his thoughts. Admiral, the human fleet has arrived. On the main screen, 57 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Each one was larger than any Confederate vessel. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Admiral, Kale realized that everything had just changed forever. The human fleet hung in space like sleeping giants. Admiral Kyle had seen many ships in his long career, but nothing like these. Where Confederate vessels were sleek and graceful, human warships looked like floating fortresses. Their hulls were covered in thick armor plating, weapon ports, and sensor arrays. Admiral Kale, came a new voice over the communication system. This is Admiral Hawk of the UNS Retribution. We've come to collect our missing patrol boat. The lead human ship was massive. Kale's flagship could have fit inside its cargo bay with room to spare. But despite its size, Admiral Hawk's tone was polite and professional. Admiral Hawk, Kale replied, your people are safe aboard my ship. We found them drifting and provided medical assistance. We appreciate that. We're sending a shuttle to collect. Captain June and his crew. Commander Nari watched the proceedings with growing fascination. Captain June, before you leave, could we learn more about your people's history? For our records? June considered this. What would you like to know? How did you develop such advanced military technology so quickly? Most species take thousands of years to develop space-based weapons. Chief Engineer Hana answered. We didn't have thousands of years. When the collective attacked Earth, we had basic chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. That was it. But now your ships are more advanced than ours in many ways, Captain Day observed. Necessity drives innovation, Tactical Officer Sung said. When your choice is adapt or die, you adapt very quickly. Nari activated her recording device. Could you tell us about the progression of your military development? June nodded. It might help you understand us better. The first attacks came without warning. The collective took over our computer networks and began building factories. Within months, they had robot armies landing on Earth. What did you do? Kyle asked. At first, we fought with conventional armies, tanks, aircraft, infantry, but the collective's robots were better than anything we had. They didn't get tired, didn't feel fear, and they learned from every battle. Hana brought up images on the display. These are from the Battle of New York, 6 months after the first attack. You can see our forces being systematically destroyed. The Confederate officers watched human soldiers fighting desperate battles against endless waves of machines. The humans were brave, but clearly outmatched. We lost Earth in the first year, Sung said quietly. but we evacuated as many people as possible to our colonies on Mars and Europa. That must have been devastating, Nari said. It was just the beginning, June replied. The collective followed us. Every world we tried to defend, they took. We realized we needed to fight in space, not on planets. How did you build a space fleet so quickly? Day asked. We turned every available resource into ship construction, Hana explained. Mining stations, asteroid belts, even our remaining colonies became shipyards. Every human adult worked on the war effort. The images changed to show massive construction projects in space. Enormous factories built into asteroids, churning out warships at incredible speeds. At first, our ships were simple, Sung noted. Basic hulls with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They weren't very effective against collective vessels. What changed? Kale asked. We started studying captured collective technology, June said. But we couldn't copy their designs directly. They were too advanced and used principles we didn't understand. So we developed our own solutions, Hana added. Instead of energy shields, we built thicker armor. Instead of plasma weapons, we improved kinetic launchers. Instead of advanced AI, we used human crews who could think creatively. Nari studied the technical diagrams appearing on the screen. Your approach was completely different from standard galactic development. We didn't know there were standards, Sung said. We just built whatever worked against the collective. The records showed the evolution of human warships over 2 centuries, early vessels that looked crude and desperate, later designs that became sleeker and more sophisticated. Finally, the massive warships of the modern human fleet. This is fascinating, Day said. But these later ships seem incredibly powerful. Much more than you would need just to fight the collective. The 3 humans exchanged glances. The collective adapted, June explained. Every time we developed a new weapon, they found a counter. Every time we built better ships, they built better ships. It became an arms race, Hana said. We had to keep building more powerful weapons just to stay even. Show them the Titan records, Sung suggested quietly. June hesitated, then brought up new files. This was the Battle of Titan Station, where our ship was damaged. It was one of the last major engagements of the war. The display showed a massive space battle, hundreds of ships on each side, firing weapons that lit up space like stars. The collective vessels were sleek and alien, while the human ships looked like mobile weapons platforms. The collective had learned to build ships that could absorb energy weapon fire, Sung explained. So we developed kinetic weapons with enough power to punch through any armor. They developed shields that could deflect kinetic rounds, Hana added. So we built weapons that fired so many rounds the shields couldn't stop them all. They created point defense systems to destroy our projectiles, June continued. So we developed projectiles that could dodge point defense and think for themselves. Admiral Kale watched the battle footage with growing horror. The weapons being used could destroy moons. The explosions were visible from millions of kilometers away. This wasn't war as the Confederation understood it. This was 2 civilizations trying to completely annihilate each other. How did it end? Nari asked. We built something the collective couldn't counter, Sung said simply. Planet crackers. Weapons designed to destroy entire worlds in minutes. But that's... Day started to say, then stopped. Overkill? June asked. Yes, it was. But the collective had turned dozens of worlds into fortress planets. Each one could build 1,000 ships per day. We had to destroy the planets themselves to stop the production. The records showed the final phase of the war, human fleets approaching collective worlds and reducing them to asteroid fields with weapons that split planets apart at the molecular level. We broke their main fleet at the Battle of Proxima, Hana said. After that, the remaining collective forces scattered. We're still hunting down the survivors. That's what patrols like ours do, Sung added. Find collective remnants and eliminate them before they can rebuild. Commander Nari reviewed the data she had recorded. This explains your military capabilities. But what about your industrial capacity? How do you build so many ships? Every human settlement has shipyards now, June explained. We learned that being able to replace losses quickly was just as important as having good weapons. The war taught us that peace is temporary, Hana said, but our ability to defend ourselves must be permanent. Admiral Kyle absorbed this information with growing unease. Captain, how many of your people survived the war? About 12 billion humans are left, June replied. Down from 30 billion before the collective attacked. The number hit the Confederate officers like a physical blow. These humans had lost 18 billion people, more than the total population of most species in the Confederation. I'm sorry, Nari said quietly. We survived, Sung said, and we made sure it can never happen again. A communication came in from the human shuttle. Captain June, we're ready for transfer whenever you are. June stood up. Admiral Kale, thank you for saving our lives. I hope this information helps. You understand humanity better. One more question, Kyle said urgently. What happens if humanity encounters other hostile species? Will you use these weapons against them? June paused at the door. Admiral, we hope we never have to fight another war. But we learned something important from the collective war. The only way to guarantee your people's safety is to be so dangerous that no one dares attack you. We call it peace through superior firepower, Hana added. And it works. As the humans left for their shuttle, Admiral Kale realized he was holding information that would change galactic politics forever. The Confederation had based their civilization on the idea that reasonable beings could always find peaceful solutions. But what happened when you encountered unreasonable beings who wanted to destroy you completely? The humans had found an answer to that question, and that answer was currently floating outside his ship in the form of 57 warships that could crack planets. Admiral Kale watched the human shuttle dock with the massive ship called Retribution. The name seemed appropriate. Everything about the human vessels spoke of deadly purpose. Where Confederate ships had smooth lines and graceful curves, human warships were all angles and armor plating. Admiral, his communications officer called out, Admiral Hack is requesting permission to speak with you directly. Put him through. The main screen showed a human male with graying hair and calm eyes. Behind him, Kyle could see the bridge of the Retribution. It was larger than his entire command deck, filled with weapon control stations and tactical displays. Admiral Kale, Hawk said, my people tell me you've been very helpful. Captain June says you're curious about humanity. Your species is unlike anything we've encountered, Kale replied carefully. I imagine so. Most species we've met seem to have developed in more peaceful circumstances. Hawk's expression became serious. Captain June mentioned that you wanted to understand our military capabilities. Yes, but perhaps this isn't the best time. Actually, it's the perfect time, Hawk interrupted. You see, Admiral, your fleet has stumbled into something that was going to happen eventually. First contact between humanity and the galactic community. Commander Nari leaned forward. You knew about us? We've detected signs of spacefaring, civilizations for decades, energy signatures, radio transmissions, ship movements. We've been watching and learning before making contact. Captain Day looked confused. Why didn't you approach us directly? Admiral Hack smiled, but it wasn't entirely friendly. Because we learned from our war with the collective. When you encounter an unknown species, you need to understand their capabilities and intentions before revealing your own. And what have you learned about us? Kale asked. That you're peaceful, civilized, and completely unprepared for real warfare. Hack's tone wasn't mocking, just stating facts. Your ships are beautiful, but they couldn't survive 5 minutes against serious military vessels. The Confederate officers bristled at this assessment, but they couldn't argue with it. They had seen what human weapons could do. We don't need military vessels, Nari said. We've had peace for centuries. Yes, you have, Hawk agreed. But that peace exists because you've never encountered anything truly dangerous. Until now. The implications of that statement hung in the air. Admiral Kale realized that Hawk wasn't threatening them. He was simply pointing out that humanity's presence in the galaxy changed everything. What do you want from us? Kyle asked. Nothing, Hawk replied. We're not conquerors, Admiral. We just want to be left alone to rebuild our civilization. But we also want you to understand what you're dealing with. We've seen your weapons demonstrations, Day said. We understand that you're very powerful. No, I don't think you do. Hawk turned to someone off-screen. Commander Park, show them the fleet composition data. New information appeared on the Confederate displays. Ship counts, weapon specifications, production capabilities. The numbers were staggering. 50,000 active warships, Hawk said. Each one capable of destroying entire fleets, production facilities that can build replacements faster than most species can count them. But why so many? Nari asked. The war is over, is it? Hawk asked quietly. Admiral, we've been monitoring your communications since we arrived. Your Galactic Confederation includes hundreds of species, correct? Yes, over 300 member worlds. And in all that time, with all those different species, you've never encountered anything like the Collective? Never met a species that simply wanted to destroy rather than negotiate? Kale thought about it. No, never. Then you've been very lucky. But luck runs out, Admiral. Eventually, you'll encounter something that can't be reasoned with, can't be negotiated with, and won't. Stop until you're all dead. That's a very dark view of the universe, Nari said. It's a realistic view, Hawk replied. And when that day comes, what will you do? Your weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. Your ships are built for exploration, not war. Your people have no idea how to fight a species that wants to exterminate them. The uncomfortable truth of his words settled over the Confederate bridge. They had built their civilization on the assumption that reasonable beings could always find common ground. But what if that assumption was wrong? Are you offering to protect us? Kyle asked. We're offering to be allies, Hawk said. But understand what that means. Humanity doesn't fight limited wars. We don't take prisoners. We don't negotiate with enemies who threaten our friends. When we go to war, we go to win permanently. Captain Day studied the human fleet displays. Your ships, they're so heavily armed, it seems like overkill. Admiral, Hawk said, let me tell you something we learned fighting the Collective. There's no such thing as overkill. There's only open fire, and I need to reload. But surely there are rules of engagement, Nari protested, limits on what weapons can be used. The only rule is survival, Hawk replied. Everything else is negotiable. Admiral Kale felt the weight of this revelation. Admiral Hawk, what happens now? How does this change things? That depends on you, Hawk said. You can report back to your Confederation that you found a dangerous species that should be avoided. Or you can tell them you found potential allies who take defense very seriously. And if we choose the first option, then we'll respect your decision and stay away from Confederate space. But Admiral, the galaxy is bigger than your Confederation. There are things out there that make the Collective look friendly. When you meet them, and you will eventually remember this conversation. The human Admiral paused, then continued. We spent 200 years learning how to fight an enemy that wanted us extinct. We got very good at it. Good enough that we're still here. And the Collective isn't. What would an alliance with humanity involve? Kale asked. Mutual defense. If someone attacks Confederate worlds, we help stop them. If someone attacks human space, you provide whatever support you can. But your military is so much more powerful than ours, Day pointed out. What could we offer? Intelligence. Trade. Different perspectives on problems. Not everything requires planet-cracking weapons, Admiral. Sometimes you need diplomats and scientists and engineers. We have plenty of weapons. We could use more friends. Commander Nari looked at the human. Fleet data again. These production numbers? You could build ships faster than most species could crew them. We learned that industrial capacity wins wars, Hawk agreed. But we also learned that having allies means you might not have to fight wars at all. Admiral Kyle made a decision that would reshape galactic history. Admiral Hack, I would like to arrange formal contact between humanity and the Galactic Confederation. This is too important for field commanders to decide alone. Agreed. We'll send a diplomatic mission to your capital world. But Admiral, make sure your leaders understand what they're dealing with. We're not just another species with advanced technology. We're a species that learned how to win wars that can't be lost. I'll make that clear. Good. And Admiral, one more thing. Captain June mentioned that your species finds our weapons disturbing. I understand that. But remember this. Every weapon we built, every ship we designed, every tactic we developed was created to protect innocent people from something that wanted to destroy them completely. Hawk's expression softened slightly. We didn't choose to become what we are, but we chose to survive, and we'll never apologize for that choice. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Kale realized he was carrying news that would change everything. The Galactic Confederation had built their civilization on peace and cooperation. But peace, he now understood, only lasted as long as everyone agreed to be peaceful. Humanity had learned what happened when that agreement broke down, and they had made sure it would never happen to them again. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready to learn that lesson. 2. Admiral Kale stood alone on his bridge, watching the human fleet prepare to leave. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, but he could feel their unease. Everyone knew that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Admiral, Commander Nari approached him carefully. The human ships are moving into departure formation. Through the main view screen, Kyle watched the massive human warships arrange themselves in perfect order. Even their movement spoke of military precision. These weren't explorers or traders. These were soldiers who had learned their business in the hardest school possible. Admiral Hack is requesting final communication, the communications officer reported. Put him through. The human admiral appeared on screen one last time. Behind him, Kyle could see crew members preparing for faster-than-light travel. Everything on the human bridge moved with efficient purpose. Admiral Kale, before we depart, I want to make sure you understand what happened here today. I think I do, Kyle replied. We've encountered a species unlike any other in the galaxy. More than that, you've encountered the future. Whether your confederation wants it or not, the galaxy is about to become a more dangerous place because of humanity. Because of what humanity represents, Hawk corrected. We're proof that nice civilizations don't always win. That sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be better at war than anyone else. Commander Nari stepped forward. Admiral Hawk, our reports to the Confederation Council will be honest about human capabilities. But how do we explain that you're not a threat? Hawk's expression became serious. Commander, we are a threat. We're a massive threat to anyone who wants to harm innocent people. That's the point. But you said you're not conquerors, Captain Day protested. We're not. But we're also not pacifists. There's a difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. We choose not to fight. But if someone forces the choice on us, we'll win. Admiral Kyle understood the distinction. You're saying that peace requires the capability for war. I'm saying that in this universe, the only way to guarantee your people's safety is to be so dangerous that attacking you becomes unthinkable. The human fleet began moving toward the edge of the system. Even departing, they looked intimidating. 57 warships that could crack planets, leaving as quietly as they had arrived. Admiral Kale, Hawk continued, when you report to your Superiors, tell them this. Humanity is willing to be friends with anyone who wants peace, but we're also prepared to be enemies with anyone who threatens our friends. That sounds like an ultimatum. It's a promise. And Admiral, make sure they understand that we keep our promises. All of them. The communication ended, leaving the Confederate fleet alone in space. But the emptiness felt different now. Before, space had seemed vast and welcoming, full of wonders to discover. Now it felt vast and dangerous, full of unknowns that might not be friendly. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, the human ships are entering faster than light travel. One by one, the human warships disappeared in flashes of light. Soon, only empty space remained where the most powerful fleet in galactic history had hung moments before. Admiral Kale activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Kale. Prepare for immediate departure to Confederation. Space. Priority Alpha communications to the Council. We have a great deal to report. As his fleet began moving toward home, Kale thought about the message he would have to deliver. How do you tell an entire civilization that everything they believed about the universe was wrong? The Galactic Confederation had thrived for centuries on the principle that intelligent species could always find peaceful solutions to their problems. Trade disputes, territorial conflicts, resource allocation, everything could be negotiated if both sides were reasonable. But humanity had encountered something that wasn't reasonable, something that couldn't be negotiated with, and they had learned to become something equally unreasonable in response. Commander Nari, Kyle said, begin preparing the full report for the Council. Include everything. Technical specifications, weapon capabilities, fleet sizes, everything. Sir, some of the Council members might find this information disturbing. They should find it disturbing. The question is whether they'll find it believable. Captain Day approached the command station. Admiral, how do you think the Council will react? Kyle considered this. Some will want to avoid humanity completely. Others will want to study their technology. A few might even suggest military action against them. And what will you recommend? Alliance, Kyle said without hesitation. Because Admiral Hack was right about one thing. Eventually, we're going to encounter something that wants to destroy us rather than negotiate with us. When that happens, I want humanity on our side. The journey back to Confederation space took 3 days. During that time, Kale's crew worked constantly to compile their report. Video recordings of the human weapons demonstrations, technical analyses of their ship designs, estimates of their industrial capacity, records of their war against the collective. The picture that emerged was terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring species. They were a civilization that had been forged in the fire of total war and emerged stronger than anyone thought possible. Admiral, Nari reported, we're receiving communications from the Council. They want immediate briefings upon our arrival. Are they prepared for what we're going to tell them? I don't think anyone could be prepared for this. When they finally reached the Confederation capital world, Admiral Kale found himself facing a packed chamber of representatives from hundreds of species. Diplomats, scientists, military officers, and political leaders all waited to hear about humanity. Council members, Kale began. 3 days ago, we encountered a species that will change our understanding of what's possible in this galaxy. For the next 6 hours, he presented everything they had learned. The room grew progressively quieter as the implications became clear. These weren't just new aliens with different technology. These were beings who had learned to wage war on a scale that no one had imagined. The human admiral was very clear about their intentions, Kale concluded. They want peace, but they're prepared for war. They'll be friends to anyone who wants friendship, but enemies to anyone who threatens their friends. Council leader Vash, a respected elder of the cetacean species, spoke first. Admiral Kyle, are you certain these numbers are accurate? 50,000 warships seems impossible. I'm certain, sir. I watched their weapons demonstrations personally. A single human scout ship destroyed a moon with one shot. And they consider this a light weapon? Yes, sir. Their heavy weapons can crack planets. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. Representatives argued about what humanity's emergence meant for galactic peace. Some demanded immediate defensive preparations. Others suggested diplomatic overtures. Council leader Vash called for order. Admiral Kale, in your professional opinion, what should the Confederation's response be? Kale stood slowly. Council leader, humanity spent 200 years fighting for their survival against an enemy that wanted to exterminate them. They won that war by becoming the most dangerous military force in galactic history. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that represented hundreds of worlds and billions of beings. But they didn't become conquerors. They became protectors. And I believe that if we approach them with honesty and respect, they could become the greatest allies the Confederation has ever had. And if we don't? Another council member asked. Then we better hope we never encounter anything that makes us need their help. Because if humanity decides we're not worth protecting, we'll face the next existential threat alone. The debate that followed would last for weeks, but Admiral Kale had planted the seed of an idea that would eventually grow into the most important alliance in galactic history. Somewhere in the void, human ships continued their patrols, watching for threats that might emerge from the darkness between stars. They had learned that the universe was dangerous, and they had made themselves dangerous enough to survive it. The galaxy was about to learn the same lesson, and whether that lesson came through friendship or through fear would depend on choices that were yet to be made.